Hi, this is the Wasatch Taxpayers Association Heber City Council debate. We're going to move on to our third question, which is the citizens keep talking about managing growth, okay? I want to know how we can improve, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in the first question, but I want to know how we can communicate better with the county and the other public entities, especially the county moving forward, because if you annex property, it's going to be the county's property. So I want to know how you plan to understand what the history of those developments were and the developer prior to them coming to the Planning Commission or coming to the City Council with their plans for annexation. So that's the question. How are you going to, what do we need to do in the system to have the City Council prepared to deal with these annexations before they come? Because there seems to be a disconnect between the council and the city when they come over to the city to possibly annex. Mike, go ahead.
Well, I would say right off the bat, annexation is not growth. Annexation is deciding who is in control of the development on that property. We're surrounded by growth. We're in Utah. 70% of our county is public land. So we have this little piece here and lots of growth in our state. Almost over 60% of the growth in Utah is from Utah. It's internal, and it's the same in Heber City. I mean, you grew up here and you're still here. My kids are growing up here. They want to stay here. I can tell you dozens of people in my neighborhood that grew up here, and they're still here. And now they're having kids. So we are our growth. If you have more than 2 kids...
Right, but the question is, how do we know what the history of those parcels of land and developments were at the county before they moved to the city?
So you're talking about basically something that's already been granted, such as North Village. But we can look broader on properties that don't have development rights at all yet, or they have ag rights, or 5-acre rights. So Walsburg's dealing with this right now.
Right, so how are we going to communicate better, and what do we need in our systems for Heber City so that you're prepared for those?
I think density and that type of growth, urban growth, should be in a city and not a county. Okay, we've given North Village and Jordanelle and Twin Creeks, and that's all density in the county now, and that's out. That horse is out of the barn, kind of like Kimball Junction. But I will still believe Heber City the city is where growth should be, and I support density in a city, not sprawl outside of the city. Now, cities do need to grow though, and they should slowly grow. The reason that I think North Village is, and I disagree with Ron, in that I think we should annex the whole thing immediately, because I think Heber City should control and for how that is developed, and Heber City should not, if we don't annex it, then that's going to become the shiny new city on the hill, and Heber City will languish because we have still all the impacts, we don't have any of the revenue, any of the property tax, any of the control of what happens. But that's different if we're going outward somewhere else, such as north, east, westward.
The other thing that I would say is, if you got a development, I don't think, I know that myself as a city council person does not have the time or the energy to think ahead and say, well, this guy may apply for annexation, so I'm going to study everything that he's done in the county. I'm not going to do any of that until he makes application, and perhaps we need to have in our planning commission that one of the things they do, and they probably already do it, is this the same thing, developer, that you presented to the county? Are we looking at the same thing? And that report will come to us and say, yes, this is what they planned on doing, and this is essentially the same as they had for the county. They're doing it in the city. We want to do it in the city. and then we can take a look at it. But I don't think that we need to jump the gun and take a look at all the developers north of town and say, well, all of these people are going to be requesting annexation, so we've got to be prepared. Before they come here, we need to know everything about that development before they get here. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. But I agree with what Mike said, that the growth is already coming, and yes, it's just a matter of whether the growth is going to be in Heber City, and we have the opportunity to try to control and manage that growth. And as part of that, we will get some property taxes from them, we will provide services to them, and we will have some say as to the development.
I disagree with some of
Go ahead,
that,
Ron.
not all of it, but some of it, because I have asked that our planning office communicate better with the county planning office. And I think part of the tone of your question is that why in the world are we letting developers come in and ignore all the commitments they've made to the county? First of all, part of our MOU says that we will let them provide the sewer and the water in their already established SSDs. And they have assigned densities based on the capacity of those systems. And that's why our MOU talks about it, that we will use those systems and that we won't exceed the MOUs that have been granted, or they have another acronym for it. But I've had comments from the county planning office, and I'm a liaison to the county, so they feel comfortable talking to me. That's my assignment for the city. I go to their meetings. But we had an annexation that come and represented, they had certain densities and so forth. And the day after our meeting, I get an email from the planning office at the county, says they misrepresented the densities that we had approved. We did not, we would not, and that's why they came to the city, because we told them a week ago we were not going to give them those densities. So then they trot over and the city gives it to them. Our great big annexation petition from Sorensen for the 5,700 homes. There's an issue that was emailed to us before the meeting. I'm not blaming anyone on the city staff, because it was an hour or two before a busy city council day. But before our meeting, 2 or 3 hours ahead of it, they emailed us to tell us that there was a big issue on open space, because there have been agreements made to the county as to thousands of acres of open space were going to be given to the county. Now, we're still negotiating that out. It's not been resolved yet. But that should have been something our planning office knew about. I just disagree that they're so darn busy they can't communicate with the county planning office. It's not that we have to do it the same. I agree with Jeff. But we need to understand the why of it. And there's problems that they know about. We ought to know about it.
Well, we accept.
Perry?
I'm concerned about these annexations because Chip says we get a little property tax from it, we get a little bit of this from it, but the main thing we get from an annexation is sales tax. You take the development out north that I'm concerned about, and I don't know where I stand on that yet, because that big of a development, we got to deal with the infrastructure, the public safety, public works. We got to provide that once they get it into place. All them roads are going to have to be dealt with. How do we get money back? We get very, very little of the sales property tax. Very little of that property tax comes back to the city. City's main operating funds are sales tax. There's not enough commercial out there that I've seen so far that's going to, they're saying they've done the figures and it will, but I'm worried whether or not there's going to be enough sales tax generated to pay for what we're going to have to do, and will we be carrying that load? That concerns me. Like I said, so MOUs are important. If the county said this is what we'll give you, and they say, well, we don't like that, we're going to run over to the city should never say, well, we'll give you more. That's wrong. I don't agree with that, and I think it should be a violation of the law. to do something like that.
Okay, we're gonna let Ryan answer first, and then we'll come back to you,
That's
Jeff,
fine.
okay? Ryan, go ahead.
Thank you. So just a quick point on annexations. One of the biggest benefits of an annexation is the control you get. You get a seat at the table. And I've said this oftentimes before, when it comes to development, if you're not at the table, you're going to be on the menu. And you're going to be impacted, but you're going to have absolutely no say. So that's one of the biggest benefits of an annexation is the control you get to wield and be able to steer and manage what happens there. Circling back to the two questions that led the discussion, I think it would be very helpful in all staff reports to have a section on prior approval history for both the city and the county, depending on where the parcel is located, as well as a density difference if it's currently in the county and they're looking at coming into the city. Those are two things that should lead every staff report to set the context and set the tone so that way we can, as a body, make an informed decision. There's a parcel right now that has come before the Planning Commission. I've had been able to serve on the Planning Commission for the last 4.5 years, and there's a parcel right now off Southfield Road that has a very lengthy history, and they came to the Planning Commission asking for an upzone to increase their density. And but for some very involved neighbors, we would have never had the context and the understanding necessary to make an informed decision with what happened with that parcel. The neighbors, particularly two homeowners who has been disproportionately impacted by what's happening there, who came to the Planning Commission and presented a very lengthy history of that parcel from when it came into the city in the first place, all the prior guarantees and assurances that had been given. There were some legally binding agreements, some of which still applied, some of which had expired. But the important thing is even the ones that expired had at this point been relied upon to their own detriment by the existing homeowners and residents. And that's the type of context that helps inform a decision that's really helpful to have. So let's put that in the staff reports. Let's make sure we're soliciting that from the county and from the city staff so that way those decisions can be made.
Thank you. Has everybody answered so far? Okay, I had a feeling somebody got it.
Well, and I think it's important, you know, your original question was, how does the city and the county work together? And I think a lot of those walls that have been built up over the years are starting to come down. We're seeing that with Heber City Police and Wasatch County Sheriff. I think we need to continue to work on developing relationships with our county council, with our county manager, with our Heber City Council and Planning Commission. We have to work together. There shouldn't be a them versus us. And I think that's been the problem over the last 40 or 50 years. It's time to get over those, bury the hatchet, let's move forward and work together.
And that's what I was talking about, are those systems. What systems can we put in place so that we ensure that? Mike, did you get to answer this question already? I want to just make sure.
You know, I think the systems are in place. Sometimes it's just the people involved.
Implementing it?
Yes, it needs to be implemented.
And it's personalities. It's willing to sit down at the table and have a discussion and say, hey, we've got this coming up. Tell me the history about it. I would much rather sit down with someone and learn the history than have staff go and create a 10-page document on what history was.
That you're not going to read.
I will read it.
Yeah, but there's some citizens that do read that stuff. I just want to say, I read staff reports.
Right. And
But,
put it in
So-
the
But that's, it's like I say, you get bored as you start to read that kind of stuff, and
Some
we're
people
not
get
paying
bored.
attention. We don't pay attention.
Jeff, I
Well, I
wanted
just
to
want
come back to you.
One clarification about annexations. It's a multi-step process. The first step is somebody wants to make application to be annexed into Heber City. Us accepting that application doesn't mean we accept the annexation. That means that yes, we'll look at it and we send it to the Planning Commission and go through multiple steps. And when it's all said and done, it ends up with the City Council looking at what has been found out about it and whether it's going to be beneficial for the city to be annexing this property. Just because we accept an application doesn't mean we are accepting an annexation.
That's a good point. So there's steps to annexation. I think I'm correct on this, but correct me if I'm wrong, that there have been some annexations that have applied and they were given density approvals at the time that they were going for application. There was some density determinations that wanted to be done at the point of the application being applied for, and shouldn't that be two separate things? The application process, and then the development agreement down the road should be determining densities that should not be done at the same meeting with the application of the, am I right? Or
Not exactly. What Jeff's saying, there's one step ahead of it. We, as a city, decide what our sphere of influence, we call it the annexation policy area, okay? And anybody within that has a right to make application. It puts a bit of pressure on us because we have 30 days or something. If we don't,
14.
14, if we don't vote yes or no, then it's automatically accepted. But that is nothing more than a petition to study, like Jeff said. And then, but they, in their petition, they can suggest what zone they want to be in. They can, I mean, Sorensen has outlined the whole humongous area of what they want. Excuse me. They've asked for it. We don't have to approve it. And we can have discussions about density and everything else as we go through the process. We've already had several meetings where there's been the traffic study, there's been the banks come in and done some pro forma. It's going to take a while.
anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I just
Go
want
ahead.
10 seconds. I don't believe in giving density ever, and that's what we have done for many years. Density should not be given, it should be exchanged for something of benefit to the city. And I firmly believe that. I believe in density, but not giving it. And I don't believe in enriching land speculators, though that's the system we've had in place since I've been here for 25 years, is someone asks for it, we ponder and decide, and then we give it to them. And we give them millions of dollars of value. That should be coming to the city in an exchange of open space, affordable housing, trails and parks. It's an exchange, not a gift. It shouldn't be a gift.
And I've been amazed how many developers come to the planning commission spitballing ideas. What do you think? We should have a plan. We should be saying, this is what we want to build moving forward, and not let people come in and say, hey, I'd like to put this in and that in. That should be our vision, not someone from the outside coming in.
Once they've been annexed, the city council have less options for negotiation because they have a right to a zone.
Sure.
Then we get down to property rights, okay? They do not have, in my opinion, a property right to any more than the zone that they bought when they bought the property.
But zones have been changing an awful lot. There's
Yeah,
been
some
a lot of
zones, and I
upzoning.
agree entirely with Mike. I like Mike when he says, well, there's a value there that we ought to negotiate a benefit for the city.
I'm okay to
Anybody
change,
else?
I'm okay to change a zone. In fact,
There's value.
but it has to be an exchange of value to the city, and that can be money.
In the best interest.
That can be a lot of money.
Okay,
I agree.
Perry?
But it has to be in the best interest for the citizens of Heber City, not just a few people. It has to be in the best interest for everybody.
But how do you determine that?
Because you're gonna study it. Remember that 10 pages you said you'd read?
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna do.
That's why the meetings are 5 hours.
And the city has to get something of value.
The general plan will inform that. Sorry, Ryan.
Right, what happens with the envision process is going to inform those decisions down the road. The city has to get something of value. I think we're going to be seeing it a lot more in the context of our moderate income housing plan, especially as the state legislature continues to require more from municipalities. They've already acted in the form of Senate Bill 34, but the consensus, right, is that's going to form that's a floor, not a ceiling. And I think over the next several years, they want to try and raise the floor in terms of what's required of cities to meet a moderate housing needs within their boundary. And so that's one way to do it. And I've expressed before an interest in exploring a PUD ordinance where you get open space in return for clustering density. Midway has done that very well.
Anybody else?
Well, I'm agreeing
Got a
with
couple
this
minutes.
value, and I am on the low and moderate income board, and is Jeff, and we get this resistance from developers. That isn't our problem, but there is value increase, and that's absolutely where we ought to be extracting some value for the other citizens, for our police and our school teachers and that. They are just not being able to afford to live here. And our developers ought to be helping with that. How do we arrive at a value? That's kind of a planning commission thing, Ryan, but you get an appraisal. What's it worth with this density and what's it worth with that density? You could give us a value. I know you could, and it's a lot, it's millions.
I'm a real estate broker, that's why he's saying that, so just so you know.
I mean, it can be arrived at,
Why
we
would
can
I
get a
know that?
number, right?
Okay, anybody else? We're good? Thanks.
Thank you.